Everyone, it's great to have my guest here, fellow West Pointer, Tad McIntosh, West Point class of '89. He had a very interesting career, started out as an infantry officer after West Point, moved into recruiting, command, and then was a very successful recruiter after leaving the military. And 20 years ago, started his own HR outsourcing and recruiting firm called Humcat. So we're here in Dallas, and we're going to have a nice chat with Tad. So Tad, you had a lot of challenges getting out of the military, as we all did. And then you were very successful as a recruiter, and now you're an entrepreneur. Tell me a little bit about your career and how it developed into what it has been.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And it's great to see you all. If you can see me out, you can see the traffic of great LBJ or 635 right behind us here. So this is real live, and that's not a green screen behind us. That's real. But yes, I'm class of 1989. Some of y'all might think I'm class of 1889, but I'm class of 1989. I'm that old, it feels like some days. But I got out of Army recruiting, which I went into, to be candid, kicking and screaming because the Army was about to miss its accession mission that it had in the last administration. And the Army said, we're going to recruit some high potential captains in who are good on their feet and look good in uniform and get out there and make sure people join the Army. So it's really kind of a fundamental pivot in my military career, which ended up being a godsend to be able to get out of leading 50 recruiters on a day-by-day basis where I was in the city of Atlanta, to then getting out of the Army into recruiting. And I had a tech degree at West Point, a systems engineering degree. So I fit into a tech and executive search firm that was headquartered here in Dallas and really kind of re-skilled a little bit in terms of starting off as an individual contributor recruiter, and then was somewhat gifted to be able to be successful at it, but also worked hard and ended up being kind of in charge of a number of people, fairly quickly in the recruiting industry, in and around the tech industry, and in and around the Texas economy. So it was honestly kind of fortuitous. Part of it was my plan. Part of it was, in my opinion, God's plan. And part of it was just working hard and trying to meet the right people and serve clients well.
So you went from infantry to recruiting. That was a great pivot because it helped prepare you for your civilian career. What was it like? What were the key differences between recruiting in the military and then in the civilian world?
Absolutely. So recruiting in the military, you're recruiting younger people who are younger than you, and you're talking to them about something you've done and an experience they want to live and an education they want and a country they want to serve. So it's something you've been there, done that. When I got out of the military straight into a executive search tech recruiting firm, we were hiring for companies that were growing really fast and functions that I actually didn't know how to do myself, and for multiple clients at the same time. So it wasn't just one customer, it's multiple customers, and it's learning new skill sets, learning and meeting new people constantly, and being able to, with a level of accuracy and a level of intensity, to be able to screen people from, do they fit in this company or do they fit in this company? Because people don't all fit in the same places, either by skill set or by demeanor or by their goals or even by the industry sets in which what they want to do.
That's a great way to position that. Actually, I think it was in one of those buildings over there when I got out of the military that I met with you at K-Force, right? Do you remember that?
I do. It was about a block the other way. Yes, it's very close to here. Exactly.
So it's funny that we're doing this here many years later.
And K-Force's offices are in this office complex over here now. So very even closer here. So, which K-Force is a couple $1 billion recruitment firm headquartered out of Tampa. Anyway, who hires, by the way, military people?
Yeah. So you talked about being reskilled, and I think that's an important thing for people to understand, because when they get out of the military, they think they can do everything. And at West Point, we learned that we're exceptional people, we're the best, but at the same time, you got to take that and pivot that into other areas. Talk to me about how academy grads, what makes them successful, those that are after leaving the military and then pivoting to their civilian career.
Got it. A couple of things on that. One, I would say specifically around academy graduates who had been leave, like let's say as a captain, we'll just use that example. I leave after 5 years of service as a captain. Most of them have learned how to learn things pretty quickly, number one. And number two, they've learned how to excel at different levels, whether it's excelling, at an academy or whether that's excelling as a lieutenant and then as a captain to be able to get promoted, and probably have 2 or 3 different kind of jobs in that era. So they've probably been in a time of constant transition from 18 to 27, which is about when most people are getting out, somewhere during that 27 and 30 year mark of being 27 to 30 years old. And so one of the things that's on your side is you've had a lot of different jobs, but you've been purpose trained for those jobs. So one of the biggest things I see when people are getting out, I kind of say, okay, pretend like you're going back to being a plebe or someone to earn your way through your first, basic officer leadership course at Fort Benning, at Fort Knox, at Fort Huachuca, Fort wherever, and you're going to have to learn new skills. And so the reskilling, or almost I say reskilling and taking the rank off, because I left as a captain. I had 50 recruiters that worked for me, and I had 10 station commanders that worked for me. And we put in, every single week we were recruiting 50 people for the Army. We're joining the Army. And they were probably talking anywhere from 500 to 1,000 people a week, one-on-one, to be able to go get those 50 people. Well, then when you get out, I should make the choice to say, I'm going to go in at an entry level job within this company and start from the ground up. And one of the things I see a lot of the people who might get further ahead later after their transition go and either reskill or new skill or go back to school, because then leveraging that ability is I'm a learner, and I can learn a new industry, and I can learn the industry from the ground up. And I always tell people, if you get out and you reskill, even if you're a sergeant, staff sergeant, or a lieutenant, you're probably going to be in charge of people doing that skill set within 2 to 4 years, because the leadership is built in. And I candidly see a lot of people getting out saying, oh, I'm going to get out of I'm an Army captain, or I'm a Navy, lieutenant, I think that is, or I'm an Army colonel, or I have friends who are getting out or generals. I'm going to go and lead something. Well, generically speaking, everybody loves veterans, and this is a very, very pro-veteran time, but don't confuse really thank you for your service and, oh boy, you're really qualified to lead other people that you have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah,
and that's a bigger deal than most people want to admit, to including some of the general officers that are friends of mine who were there at West Point in the 80s.
I think it's an important thing. I like to tell people that have a beginner's mindset, be humble, be willing to learn, because we're always learning. And, a lot of people that work with us at CareerNerds are looking for a career pivot. Well, honestly, every career transition is a career pivot, when they're making a career move up or to a different industry, because you're going to need different skills that you had in the previous job. The past doesn't equal the future. You're going to have to reskill, like you said, right?
Well, exactly, reskill, but it's also looking internally. And one of the things people forget about is, like, even though you and I are sitting there, and if we walked out in the thing and we went and walked in and saw the guy who owns the place we're doing this interview at, and he'd look at us as West Pointers from around the same era, a lot of people say, oh, well, they kind of probably are a lot alike. Well, we are a lot alike in some ways, from the training, from the things we can go do. But if you look at the internals of the people coming out of the military, probably gifted very differently, whether you're more math science oriented, whether you're more gregarious, whether you're more of an analytical type person, because that's the piece where people sometimes shortchange themselves, saying, hey, where does my persona that was given to me and it was already locked into me by the time I hit the military's doors, what are career fields that might transition into? Like people with extroversion and people with, kind of drive and extroversion, like on a disc profile, a high D, high I, that's sales and marketing, right? Versus people who are higher in using a disc format, where they're higher in S and C, where they more be analytical or more operational. And in the military, we kind of get told, oh, you can do everything. Well, you kind of can, but can you do everything with excellence with constant global competition? Probably not.
Right. I think it's really important. Like you said, you got to find your lane that fits your personality. We're not all cookie cutter coming out of the military.
Right. And I was just lucky enough to be able to do some recruiting before I started recruiting. So I hit the ground running. But then you've got customers. And one of the things that I noticed the biggest difference between recruiting in the Army and recruiting outside is, like our company, our small company, Humcap, headquartered in Plano, we serve over 200 companies a year for, and a paid service level. And then we're talking to, thousands of companies every year. So your brain tasks, your mental task load is big. So when you're getting out, one of the transition points I try to explain to people is, You have much less of an audience of 1, 2, 3, or 4. You have an audience of 10, 20, 30, 50 constituencies that you're talking to, not whether you know it or not. There's a lot of moving pieces, a lot faster change in the civilian, kind of commercial markets than there are in kind of that, DoD government. I've got, hey, here's the bad, the people we're supposed to be defending our country against, or here's this mission set. It's usually not 6, 8, 10 different mission sets at a time. And that's something that I tell people, like you said, be a beginner mindset, but also be a learner, because in that way, you're probably capable of doing those multitasking or multi-client things, but you've got to train yourself to be ready for that.
So I love talking to you because you have a lot of experience in helping academy grads, veterans, make the transitions, not only from military to civilian, but into higher level corporate jobs. So maybe you can share like 2 or 3 best practices of what people can do as they capitalize on their military and corporate background to take that next level, to take it to the next level.
Absolutely. So first thing I would say is if you think you're going to transition, talk to people in the industries you think you want to go into, have informational interviews with people in the industries you want to go to. Or if you say, hey, I entered into service, out of California, and I know I want to go back to California and I want to live in the Bay Area, for instance, is go back and say, okay, who do I know that I can start talking to, far in advance of my transition in that area, and get the lay of the land of both that local market. And everybody thinks, oh, you can do a job remote anywhere. Well, we've got the return to office work. So if I was a person getting out of the military, I would not take a 100% remote job, flat stop, because you can't go get the cultural and or side by side training that you can get with being in the office with people who have experience in what you need to learn. So one, I'd go to the places and the industries you think you want to go into and start just having meetings and coffees with people who will have either a coffee with you, or if they'll do a Zoom call with you, or they'll do a phone call, is talk to them in advance. The second thing I would say is I would do some of the free online personality profile tools, because a lot of those will tell you, well, if this is your behavioral traits, or if this is your background, you might fit job A, B, or C. So then you're getting a fresh start of I'm getting out versus, oh, I'm looking at these companies, or I'm using a Dallas example, I want to work for American Airlines. Well, there's hundreds of kind of jobs at American Airlines. If you just love aviation and say, I want to go into Dallas, Texas, and I want to work at Southwest Airlines or American Airlines, those are great goals. However, it's getting to know who are people at those places that I could maybe meet, like the COO of American Airlines is at West Point, 1986, that famous class from West Point. Of course, he's from the class of 86. But the point is who are people in those industries and who are people who've done those jobs, and be able to see them far in advance of your transition, not to go ask for a job, but just to go, golly, what would that be like if I was applying for jobs at your company? The third thing is you can't know too many people. It is physically impossible. And so the biggest thing, we were not trained in the military to network really, to actively network, but is to figure out, how do I put myself in a position to where I know 10, 20, 30, 50 people in and around that locale, in those industries, in those places. But it's not even necessarily the people that you meet that are in the industry, in the area you want to be. You want to meet people in the area who might know people in those industries, because sometimes it's their next door neighbors in the industry, or their co-leader at a church or scouts or school or whatever that is. They're going to know people, and they're going to say, oh, I met this young person coming out of the military. Would you do me a favor and talk to them? And almost 100% of the time, when somebody asks somebody to do that, they're going to do that.
And that's the warm referral. I just want to summarize what you just said. You said a lot of good things. So 3 things: have informational interviews, get smarter about the companies and industry you want to target. Second, understand yourself. Maybe take a DISC profile test or other personality tests. And third, network, building your network. And that's really important. That's what we built CareerNerds on, is helping people really tap into that academy grad network and get referrals from that to other people. So let's talk about networking. How have you used networking, not only when you were a recruiter, but in the last 20 years, you've set up a very successful company here in Dallas. How has networking helped you? And maybe what tips do you have for other people on how they can use networking?
Yeah. So I would say networking is an indispensable tool and activity it's not quite like oxygen, but it's pretty close to oxygen. Okay. With making a transition. So number one, you need to get comfortable doing it and you'll never stop doing it. So I have 3 friends that are publicly traded CEOs. They still network.
Yeah.
Okay. And they still go to functions so that they can broaden the network for their own personal interests, for their career, and to, help the community and to help their businesses and the business success they have. So number one, if you're uncomfortable doing it, get over it right now. Get over it and be able to figure out how can you network comfortably and what are the access and resources you have. Because even if you're a captain in the Army or an ensign in the Navy, or you're a staff sergeant in the Army, a master chief in the Navy, you already have a network, and you'd be surprised how many of your friends are already on LinkedIn. You'd be surprised of how many people in LinkedIn will help you pull in your contacts, high school classmates, college classmates, whatever. You're going to find that and be able to start that from a base because you already have a network. The question is, are you even talking to the network you have? Number one. And then number two, you ought to have kind of a networking strategy based on, I think I want to go to the Bay Area, or I think I want to go to New York City, or I think I want to go be in investment banking. Like if that's your premise, you got to go say, what's my networking plan if I want to go into investment banking? What's my networking plan if I want to go to New York City? I want to go back to, Toledo, Ohio, where I'm from. Well, what are people that I know from when I came from Toledo, Ohio, who might remember me from back then? Because a lot of those people are in jobs or in the school still, and they're like, oh, you should talk to this person. So, it's number one, it's indispensable. Number two, you need a plan. And number three is, and this sounds funny, is you need to get comfortable and have fun doing it, right? Because that's where a lot of people have that third piece. It's just like, okay, it's like, you might as well just make it a game saying, okay, how can I, make little mini games in your mind, especially if you're kind of an introvert, to where you got to say, I've got to have a network because I am of value. I would not have gotten into the military in any form or fashion, because only about 10% of America is physically, mentally, and morally qualified to join the military anyway. So I'm already in that top 10% of people who are in those things. Now, how do I go say, I know I'm qualified for something outside of my service? How do I figure out what that is and meet those people and just try to have fun with it?
I really love what you just told us. You said maximizing your warm network. So taking a look at everybody you went to school with, people you went over the years, maybe you worked with. Second, having a networking plan and strategy is really important. And third, having fun with the process. I always tell people who sign up with CareerNerds, I said, you want to be successful, don't think we're a magic pill, because if you're attached to the outcome, you're probably not going to be as successful as those people who enjoy the networking process. And it's tough for someone to think about it because it's not natural for a lot of people to talk to a lot of strangers or reconnect with people that they knew in the past. But having fun with it, actually, that's the number one thing that I see our successful CareerNerds clients is tell us, hey, networking with Academy grads, it's so energizing and so fun. So tell me, I think that's one of the biggest challenges people have is seeing how networking can be a game and can be fun. What tips would you have on how people can make it a fun game?
Okay, so a couple things, ways to, and by the way, I was a math science major at West Point Systems Engineering, so I'm good at numbers. So if you're saying to me, hey, make it a game, I'd start with points. Mm-hmm. And even if you were saying to me, hey, I'm a captain and I'm getting out in 6 months or a year, because a lot of people know. Usually people don't have just one event and they say, I'm getting out tomorrow, right? That's hopefully not. If that is, you're in them, it's a different case. You say, I'm getting out and I've got 1 year and I'm getting out. I would be starting to say, how do I get active on my social media? The number one thing is LinkedIn. And how do I start talking about to my network that I already have, who I am, where I am, what I'm doing, and more importantly, where I'm trying to go. And so part of that would be saying, hey, how many posts a month can I do about both my desired outcome in a year, as well as what I'm doing today? Mm-hmm. Number one. And just even thinking on the post side, how do I do that? And then number two is make it a game on points is, okay, how many connections can I gain a month that are real connections that are in that path that I want to go to? Like if you said to me, hey, I really want to go work at Frito-Lay. So I'm going to go figure out how many military people or academy people at Frito-Lay can I somehow get to on a networking basis and or be introduced to so that you can do that. So one, make it a game and kind of make it points and try to give yourself a reward when you're doing those things. Because to be candid, If you had a very narrow thing, is I want to get in the food and beverage industry, and Frito-Lay is my number one target, that would be a very hard thing to do as a junior military officer or as a non-commissioned officer, because you'd have to figure out how do people get into there. Right. I mean, it's like the entry point, because to be candid, even if you ask me, I wouldn't know how, because I'm more in the tech industry and in the emerging growth, middle market type stuff, and that's not a big, and there are some people who got into that after the military, but usually it's post an MBA program.
I do like how you say, make it a numbers game. I was a math major as well. So I like numbers. And I always tell people, if you're in a full-time search, you should probably be doing 4 to 6 networking calls a day, per day. And I remember a conversation I had once with West Pointer years ago. I said, he was doing a full-time search. And I said, how many networking calls are you doing a week? And he said 1 or 2. I said, you're not going to make a lot of progress if you're doing 1 or 2. You need to be doing 4 to 6 a day. And so let's talk about the biggest mistakes people have made, because you've seen them all, but maybe if you can highlight like the top 3 mistakes that people make in terms of like networking or trying to get the jobs that they want.
I think the first mistake is not giving yourself enough time, because with time, almost anything's possible for somebody who's got capability and has a realistic goal, right? So number one, time is a big issue. And then the second issue is not giving yourself enough pre-trips to where you think you want to go, where you think you might want to go, so you can get to know people. So that meaning, I've met a lot of people who came from Texas and they say, hey, I know I'm going to get out and I know I'm coming to Dallas, and they're, 1 year out and they've already say, hey, and I tell them, hey, pre-plot your trips and tell people, hey, I'm getting out as of July 1st, 2026. And here's times that I'm going to take leave, and I'm coming into Dallas, Texas with, a weekend and a Friday and a Monday, or I'm going to come in for these 3 days a week, these 3 to 5 times, and go ahead and plan that out, or at least the next trip you're going to be. So that's the key is, and if you said, and again, I'm using Dallas centric things, but I'm saying, if you said to me, I don't know if I want to go to Dallas or I want to go to Austin or I want to go to San Antonio. Well, to be candid, you might have to go to all 3 places.
So make that commitment to actually be in that location where you want to live.
Absolutely. And then the third mistake is, like you said, just not doing enough activity.
Yeah.
Like, you are the number one salesman for the product. I need a job and I want a good job. So you got to think about it as, I want a job, I want a good one, and I'm the only person who's the salesperson for it. I might have recruiting firms, I might have recruiting assistants, I might have mentors, I might have other people, but at the end of the day, you've got to take responsibility for at least being the catalyst for activities that get you in a position to land that position you want.
I like how you said that you have to be your main champion. I know when I got out of the military, my brother worked at Texas Instruments, and I thought all I have to do is submit my resume to my brother and I'll get a job at TI. And I remember that there was an email chain from his VP to all the managers saying, how come we can't get a job for this West Pointer whose brother works at TI? And I realized in that moment that it's not going to be my brother or anybody else that's going to be in charge of my job search. I'm going to have to own it. And do you know how I got my first 2 offers?
Huh.
So I did network within West Point grads, but I actually went to SMU Career Services, went to UTD, met some professors, went to the Career Center. And my first job offer was a result of, I went to SMU Career Center, and I said, I didn't go to SMU, but I just got out of the military and I'd like to get some help. And here's my background. And the first job offer was as a result of that visit. And the second offer, which I ended up taking, was from UTD. So I went to the places I was really unashamed to ask for help. And these were strangers. And I said, hey, here's my situation. Can you help? So let's talk about that. Being open and vulnerable and being willing to sort of fall flat on your face is something that people are very, very averse to doing. They want to play it safe. But in today's job world, you got to not play it safe. You have to actually take risks, calculated risks. But how can people, go beyond their limiting beliefs, do something that's a little bit uncomfortable, like going to a career center that you didn't go to school? How can people do that better?
I think it's a couple of things. And I wouldn't even use the analogy of fall flat on your face, because most of your outreach efforts are going to make up to nothing. Most of them. Okay. So it's like, if I'm looking, look at the camera when I'm really serious about something, most of your reach outs are going to end up with no result. Get over that first.
And that's because it's a numbers game, right?
It's a numbers game.
Yeah.
It's like, how many people, if you hit 3 out of 10, if you're in the pro baseball, even in college baseball, if you bat 300, hit 3, get on base 3 times out of 10, you're amazing. And the same thing with your networking efforts. You got to look at it as most of them are going to go out into, oh my gosh, the person didn't have enough time, or oh, it went in their junk file, or oh, whatever it was. So number one, no, you're going to have to do a decent amount of volume, and just don't worry about the missed pitches. Get at bat enough times to where your numbers are going to be your friend. If you don't do enough networking things, your numbers are not your friend. And so your numbers are your friend when you say, hey, I want to get into this industry, and I've identified these 5 companies, and all 5 of these companies are within, let's say 20 miles of each other. And you say, it's my job is to meet enough people, and every person I meet with, I'm thinking about these 5 companies, and this is all around this geographic area. And I think I want maybe one of these 3 titles. So you're empowering your network. When somebody comes into me and says, hey, Tad, I'm thinking about these 3 companies, and I'm thinking one of these 2 kinds of positions, that's a very advanced approach. Because I'm getting people say, I'm getting out of the military and I don't know what I want to do. I know I need a job. I know I was a good XYZ in the military, and I know I did these sports and I had this major at wherever I went to school. But being able to do your homework to go tell the people you're networking with, this is where I'm trying to get to. And then amazingly, because even if somebody calls me, like I just had a call with a guy in Houston the other day who's class of 01 and in transition. And I'm like, hey, what's your search? What's your search strategy? What are companies you're wanting to get into? And he goes, well, why do you know that? Well, number one, I'm not going to be placing you. But number 2, if you tell me companies you want to be interested in, I will think in my network, who is at that company? And I will ask them, I will do the pay forward to you to leverage my network to say, oh, you want Southwest Airlines? Oh, I know there's a couple Navy guys over there that go to that happy hour we were just at the other day, and they go to that. And I think I've met them a few times, and they're pilots, but they might be able to get in supply chain, or they might be able to get into customer service. They'll know people there. And so, being able to say is number one, the numbers are the key, but you have to be fresh about it. You got to be yourself about it. It doesn't mean you go show up at somebody's office and say, hey, I'm here to see, I'm going to use a local CEO. I'm here to see Joe DePinto. I mean, that's not the way. But if you said, for whatever reason, I know at 7-Eleven, which is a great company for military folks, because he's a West Pointer, and they hire a ton of military folks there. If somebody says, hey, 7-Eleven's on my list, and you're talking to any veteran around Dallas, there's a high probability that they'll know somebody there and say, hey, can you get me to somebody who works at 7-Eleven? And it's not necessarily getting into 7-Eleven at the HR department.
Yeah.
It's getting into 7-Eleven at the operations, or in sales, or in franchise management, or those things, because that's a massive company with thousands of people, tens of thousands of people globally. So, you went back and said, how do you get over the fear of rejection? Just know that it's not really rejection of you. Most people, believe it or not, have more than they can do every day in their job. And so what you're trying to do is get somebody scraps of time to help out somebody getting out of the military, and to sort of say, hey, I think I'd be a valuable asset to this company. Is there any way you can get to me somebody who might be able to talk about how does somebody transition from being an Army this, or a Navy that, or an Air Force this, or Coast Guard this, into I think it's supply chain management, or I think it's marketing, or I think it's HR. Like, just give them some clue, and you give yourself a chance, and don't rely on one person.
Right.
Or one company, to be candid. It's not, when I hear people say it's got to be this company or that company, I'm like, wow, okay. That's a mountain to climb.
So I love how we talked about networking, having a plan and strategy, enjoying it, seeing it as a numbers game. I got one final question for you, Tad. How can Academy grads work with recruiters the best way if they're looking for their next corporate job? Because recruiters are trying to fill the slots that they have. And people always think that recruiters are the solution to their career advancement. How would you answer that question?
Okay, so number one, working with recruiters is critical, because there's no chance if you get out that you're not going to be dealing with recruiters right when you get out, or even if you don't. If you're, for whatever reason, go to a JMO conference and get straight into a company without seeing a recruiter, your next job you're going to be dealing with recruiters at your own company to hire people, and you're going to be dealing with recruiters at other companies when you eventually leave that company, because very few people get out of the military and stay in the same company their whole career. So it's that next transition or this transition. And remember, recruiters work for companies to vet out candidates and make sure jobs are written correctly so they can find the right candidates and they can find enough of the right candidates so that they have a volume that they can satisfy that hiring manager and that company's demand. So number one, remember, recruiters work for companies. However, the way recruiters can work with you is say, hi, recruiter, I'm getting out or I'm making a career transition. Is there anybody on your team or that you know that has a functional and industry expertise into the companies I'm looking to be in or the positions I'm looking to have? And maybe they could look at my resume and tell me, is my resume well written? And maybe they know somebody in some of my target companies. So it's about saying to a recruiter is, chances are that you're not recruiting for my kind of jobs or my industry, but what recruiters do you know who might know somebody where I'm trying to go or might know something about the functional area I know? Because if somebody said to me, hey, Tad, like I have people that I've mentored who are young graduates of West Point and one is in law school right now. And if he said to me, hey, Tad, I need help and I'm transitioning out of law school, I'd be like, well, I can't help you. However, I do know a few legal recruiting firms, and even coming out of law school, you probably shouldn't be dealing with a recruiter. You should get recruited in law school. But the point is it getting people into that functional arena in which they know something and they know somebody who's good at that. But recruiters are indispensable. But you got to remember this. I always tell people it's a two-way street. Is recruiters will help you, but recruiters will also reach out to you when you're in position saying, hi, Tom, I'm working on a position that you might know some people who are a fit for either in your industry or not in your industry, but I've got this product management, this product marketing role. It's in technology because even you and I had some intersections in that. And when you're a candidate, let's say you're 5 years out of the military and a recruiter calls you, call them back. Because chances are they're calling for something that's close to you with either function or industry. And if you help them, then again, when you're in transition, they're going to say, oh yeah, he called me back. She called me back. Hey, they were an open networker. Like it's not about saying, hey, because what the round world concept says is kind of what you give out, you're going to get back. So it's it's pretty true. You know,
I really love how you said this because the same thing as networking with decision makers, not asking for a job, but asking for advice and referrals is the same thing you just said about recruiters, right? Recruiters can be a great wealth of resource, but it's not only if they have a job, but asking them for advice and asking them for referrals, right?
So absolutely, because people always say, "Oh, you know all these people." My guess, I know a lot of people. I make it my business to know people and enjoy getting to know people. And I joke and said I've never met a stranger, and I kind of have that mentality. I'm meeting somebody for a lifetime of somehow having some interaction with them. And it doesn't mean I'll ever see them again. But if you look at it as if a good friend of mine says, I know the world is small. I hope life's long, but I know the world's small. So I'm going to treat it like a very small world and know that I'm the intersections of people, because I have people call me who aren't giving me business who say, Tad, we've got this charity coming up in 6 months and we need some help getting some people there who will donate money.
Yeah.
I want you to talk to some people who might be interested in this cause, or heck, if they just have a lot of money, can you help me? I mean, it's not all that different. And people remember the people that help them, and people remember, because, I can't remember the exact mission of West Point, but it's to create leaders for our country that live a lifetime of service to our country. Well, think a part of your service to the country is to be of service to the people that you're around. Mm-hmm. And that round world piece there. Yes, networking and recruiters and people who are famous, like Founders Day is tomorrow night here, and you'll see famous people at that, and CEOs will be at that, and everybody will want to be talking to the CEOs, but nobody will be talking to the people that might be the classmate to the CEO. Mm-hmm. So why 10 people are lining up in front of the 2 publicly traded CEOs who are West Pointers, who I know both in Dallas, the smart networkers will be meeting their wives and their VPs.
So I love how you said, talk about small world. We met there many years ago, and now we're meeting here in the studio. So
exactly.
I want to thank Tad for all the tips and advice he gave us today. And if you want to contact Tad, you want to give your information?
Just Tad McIntosh on LinkedIn, and the company's right there. If you can see that, Humcap, HUMCAP in Plano, Texas. And I am an open networker, and I try to help people at least get to somebody that I know when they're in transition or when they're trying to do something. Or if you want to come up to Plano, we have a number of search consultants there where we meet with junior military officers and former military people all the time. And we host the West Point Young People Happy Hour about once a year and try to have fun.
That's great. Thanks, everyone. See you. Bye.